Hey, thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Dan, is this yours? Was that your one? I didn't want to take it. Good afternoon. Everybody have some good lunch? Everybody got full? You ready to go? Nobody's sleepy? Okay. Look, this is here's the deal. You've committed or made the decision to spend 45 minutes sitting here, and this is my goal. My goal is to make this the most valuable 45 minutes of your entire 2 days, right? And so I promise you that's my agenda. We're gonna go through some things really quick, but my purpose here is to really kind of help you think a little differently about your business. Let me ask this: how many of you here are business owners? How many of you own the business? Okay, so quite a few. And here's the reality. I'll say one thing, and I mean this with all respect. Thanks for your service to this country. And I say that as a military vet, so I'm not trying to dismiss military. But here's why I say that. Nearly 50% of the gross domestic product of the U.S. is generated by small business owners. And right now, 60% of the new jobs being created in the U.S. are coming from small business. So those of you who have stuck your neck out to start your own business, you're driving this economy, right? And so it's critical that you're successful. But here's the thing that really kind of drives me to do what I do. And that is 7 out of 10 businesses will fail before they reach their 10-year anniversary. And many of them that don't fail end up struggling mightily to succeed. In other words, they never achieved the dream that they really wanted. And frankly, I think that's a tragedy. I've worked with hundreds of business owners and watched many of them go through this on a daily basis, and it just tears me apart to see the pain and the struggle that happens when a business doesn't go well. In fact, I want to share with you a story. Dick started his business, just to give you one example. Dick started his business when he was 37 years old. At the time, he was working 3 jobs, but he had a large family. He had 12 kids, a wife and 12 children. And he decided the only way he could make that work was to just take the plunge and start his own business. So at age 37, he took the bold move. He took his old van, did the car wrap of the 1970s, and started his own window washing business. You see, he had a dream. He had this vision. He wanted to build a business and leave a legacy for his 8 sons. And Dick was arguably the best window washer you could find. There was no doubt, hands down, the best one in the industry. But he really struggled to make the business work. He just couldn't get people engaged. He couldn't get his team to really see the passion that he had for the business. So every day they'd come in, they'd just simply go through the motions, check, kind of clock in, clock out. Just imagine it was just washing windows. That was all they were doing, and so it just got to be frustrating. One at a time, his sons left him and decided to go find a job doing something that had a better future. One of his sons even opened a competing window washing business. And but he wouldn't quit. He decided he was going to make this business work. So he kept going. And year after year, just simply struggled his way through. Meanwhile, his wife, growing tired of the promise always being out there, after 30 years of marriage, asked him for a divorce. And Dick ended up the rest of his working years alone, struggling to make his business work. One of his sons got really lucky. He got a scholarship to go to college. He went into the military for a time, went into a corporate job, rose quickly through the corporate ranks until the point where he was running a business himself, did really well, retired at age 50, moved his family to Texas, and made the decision to commit the rest of his working career to helping small business owners avoid the pain that his dad had endured. I love my dad. My dad was the hardest working guy you could ever know. And he did. He was good at his trade. But for years I thought, man, while he knew his trade, he really didn't even know how to run a business. He didn't know how to run a business. But I've come to realize here over the years, because I've become a student of business over these last 30 years, and what I've come to realize is it wasn't my dad didn't know how to run a business. It was that my dad didn't know how to energize the people around him to help lift his business where he wanted it to go. And so he struggled with that. I lost my dad about 5 years ago. My dad washed windows on the day he died. And he missed every opportunity to live the life that he had dreamed about because he just simply didn't get it. And so over these years, I've just been, my dad used to call me when he was older, late in life, and he'd say, son, if you would have just stayed here, we could have made this work. But at the time, I didn't even know how to help. I didn't know what to do. So I couldn't do it, and now it's too late for my dad. But I do want to leave a legacy for my dad. So that's why I've been studying business. I've been working in business myself. I've run my own business and had an opportunity to discover a model. And I found this model that I found that works well, and now I've been using for the last 12 years. I've been using this model with small business owners to help them understand how their business truly works and how to engage their employees, their team members, in the business so that they don't have to do it all and take on the burden all themselves. I don't know whether any of you are feeling that way, but I suspect many businesses, I know I meet a lot of business owners where they feel like, look, I'm doing all the heavy lifting. Everybody else is just coming in, picking up a paycheck, clocking through the hours, and moving on. And I believe there's a better way to do that. So would you be okay if I shared a little bit of time kind of sharing that with you? So what I want to do is I want to take, we got about, I guess we've got, 30 minutes or so, 30, 45 minutes. I want to give you the model, and I want to show you how powerful this model is. And then what I want to do is I want to dive deep into the 3 areas of business that I see small business owners struggle with the most, where I've seen consistently that we just don't seem to get the traction that we deserve or that we need. Okay? So that's the plan, to do that. So what I want to do is I want to start by telling you how I came to the model. So at the time, many of you probably don't know this, I used to work in the building products industry. I was with Pella Corporation at the time. Pella Windows, if anybody's familiar with that. So I was working with Pella Corporation. I was in a functional role with Pella, but I always wanted to run my own business. I thought it would be cool. I've been watching people run businesses, and I was studying business to see if I could do it. One day, my boss came into my office, and he had a key in his hand. And he walked up to me and he said, Rich, this one's yours. And we had just acquired a small manufacturing business based out of Minnesota. And I jumped up. I was excited. I was thrilled. I raced home, and I told my wife, honey, we're moving to Minnesota. She wasn't as excited as I was. But the next week, I walk into the factory for the first time. And as I walk in, it hits me that I have no idea what I'm going to do to make this business better. And as I start to meet the people, so for the first couple of weeks, all I did was walk around, just start talking to people. Just kind of introducing myself, just asking people. I was faking it, I mean, honestly. And in the back of my mind, have you ever been in that situation where you felt like you were in over your head? Anybody ever do that? Right? I was there. I was way in over my head. And as I walked around, I realized nobody in here really cared about the business. They were simply there when the time was to show up. They got there sometimes, right? Some of them. And they did their work, but they weren't really worried about how well they did their work. They just did their work. They were hoping they would avoid their supervisor, if you know what I mean, right? Get through the day, get to the weekend when they get their paycheck so that they could go spend their paycheck, right? And I'm thinking to myself, how am I gonna connect with these people? And then I had an idea. And where do all great ideas hit you? Where are all your best ideas? Where do they come? What's that? In the shower, right? In the shower. Anybody had a great idea in the shower? One of these days I'm going to invent that thing that you can write on in the shower, right? So you can track your good ideas. I had this idea in the shower. And I got out of the shower, I called my admin assistant, and I said, schedule a meeting, I want everybody there. So we, the next day, cleared out a big part of the manufacturing area, the warehouse, enough to fit in 220 people in the room. And I brought this bicycle in from my house. And I set it up on a table like this at the front of the room. And when I got everybody's attention, I said, somebody tell me, what's this? And what do you think they said? Some said it was a bike. Most of them looked at me kind of like you're looking at me, kind of with that blank stare like, did we get a nutcase to run this business? Others said it was stolen property, right? Remember, we're in a manufacturing business, right? They thought I'd stolen it from somebody. I told them, no, this is my bike. But I said, look, this is not a bike. This is our business. This is our business. And if we could understand how this bike is like, our business is like this bike, we can make this business go really fast. We can tune it up, we can make it go really fast. So my first question for you is, can you see your business there? Can you see a business here on the stage? Right? Is anybody here puzzled? Anybody thinking they're in the wrong session? Right? No, here's what I did. I decided I would take them on a lap around the bike. And I told them, I kind of explained to them what the bike was like. At that moment, everybody realized exactly how our business worked. Let me just fast forward 7 years. Our $30 million business was now doing well over $100 million, and we own the top end of the market in our category. All using a bike as a metaphor for a business. So would anybody like to know how that bike is a business? So let me do this. I'm going to walk this through, but I want you in your mind thinking about your business, and then again, I'm going to take a pause, and we're going to dive into the 3 areas that I see people get, that just, if you really rethink these 3 areas, things could change significantly in your business. But let me just take you on a quick lap around the bike. So we steer a bike with the handlebars, right? We steer a bike with our handlebars. When we're a kid, how do we ride a bike? What's that? Training wheels, but what do we do with our hands when we're kids? We let them go. We put our hands in the air, right? Anybody ever do that as a kid? Try to ride your bike with no hands? Well, guess what? In business owners often ride their business with no hands. They're not steering, right? How do we steer a business? Well, we steer a business with strong leadership and a compelling vision. Strong leadership and a compelling vision. I'm going to come back to that here in a minute because it's one of the areas where I think there's huge opportunity for most all of us. So we have to steer our bike. What I told them, I said, look, we're going to start to steer this bike. We're going to steer this business. You're going to know where we're trying to go so you can all help us get there, right? So that's how we do it. We steer with that. The frame of the bike is what gives the bike its strength. It's what holds everything together. Everything is connected to the frame. If something's loose on the frame, this bike gets really wobbly and really wonky. Okay, so what gives your business your strength? What is it that gives a business its strength? Some would say they're people. Here's what I would say. Most times, what I see is most business owners themselves are trying to be the frame. They're the ones trying to hold on to all the pieces of the business, keeping it all connected, because they're really not putting in systems and processes to be able to do that. But here's what the structure of the business is. It's your organization structure, it's your job responsibilities, and it's your accountability system. Right? If you don't have those, you're working without a frame, you're doing it on your own. And you're trying to, and over time you get fatigued. And honestly, in our business, we didn't have a strong structure. We didn't have a strong framework. So we have to have that. It's got to be sturdy. On this bike, there are 2 places where the rubber meets the road. Right? It really does. The rubber meets the road. The front wheel and the back wheel. In business, there are only 2 places where the rubber meets the road. Only 2 places where the rubber meets the road. What are they? What are they? Sales, which would, in my mind, the front wheel, I call that winning new customers. Winning new customers. We have to be able to consistently win new customers. Not many businesses survive over the long term if we can't grow, if we can't attract new business. So we have to know what the elements are, and there are several elements of this front tire. I won't go into all the details right now, but this is all about winning new customers. The back wheel then is about what? What's that? Serving those customers. Serving those customers. So those are the only two things that really matter in a business. We got to be able to get our message out, tell people why we're so special, and convince them to pull out their wallet and do business with us. And then we got to service them and deliver to them more than what we committed on the front wheel, right? If we commit less, if we serve them less than what we promised them on the front wheel, what are they going to do? They're going to be disappointed. What are they going to do though? They're going to give you a bad review. They're going to pick up their phone, they're going to text people, and they're going to post on social media, and they're going to tell far more people than you have budget to be able to tell how good you are. In a single stroke, without spending a nickel, they'll tell everybody how much you suck, right? So we have to be able to deliver on the promise. Oh, by the way, what happens if our back wheel is going faster than our front wheel? So if the front wheel's going too fast, in other words, we're making promises we can't deliver, people are going to tell us we don't deliver on them. We can't fulfill. If, on the other hand, we have more capacity than we're bringing in new customers, what's going to happen? What's going to happen?
Go in the ditch.
At some point, I run out of cash, right? I run out of resources, because if I got this capacity, but I'm not bringing in, so my wheels have to go at the same speed. Isn't that interesting? So how do we keep our wheels going at the same speed? On a bike, how do you keep the wheels going at the same speed? One you pedal, the other is you use your brakes, right? So this bike has two brakes on it. One for the front wheel, one for the back. What are the brakes in our business? There are financial controls. There are financial controls. We got to know whether to pull back on the spending on the front end or pull back on the spending on the back end. And guess what? Here's what's not a financial control. And most small business owners are guilty of this. The financial control for most business owners is the checkbook. Right? If there's money in the checkbook, I can spend it. But it's not a financial control. What a financial control is your P&L statement, your balance sheet, your cash flow forecast, and your budget. Right? There are 4 documents, and my bet is, and I won't have you raise your hand, but I know this to be true, 70% of you don't see those documents at least until 2 or 3 months after the month has occurred. I'm pretty certain of that because I've been around a while. And so we have these financial controls, but we're not using them. They're historical documents rather than being things that allow us to be able to control. Does that make sense? Okay, so we have to do that. I also have this monitor on the bike that, you know, where I wear one of those chest bands. It tells me my speed, my cadence, my heart rate. Kind of tells me how I'm burning my fuel. What's that in my business? What's that in your business? What's that? It's actually what I call your key performance indicators, or the dashboard that you're looking at on a daily and weekly basis to see all the metrics of how well you're doing, to be able to forecast the future. You know what I mean? So these are things like if you're in the business of bringing in new customers, it's how many new leads did you get? What's your conversion rate on your new customers? What's your average ticket price, right? Those kinds of things, you can predict the future if you know those things, but oftentimes we're treating our business like a tricycle with no dials, yet we're wanting to fly it like an F-16 that requires a whole cockpit of dials. Does that make sense? And so we got to have a dashboard. We have to have some metrics to tell us, otherwise the crash just comes faster, right? Without the dials, you just hit the wall when you don't know it. It's like all of a sudden, boom, you're done. So you have to have your metrics and your accountabilities, right? And then I have a seat on my bike, right? Has anybody ever ridden a seat that's in the wrong place? Ever ridden a bike where the seat's in the wrong place? Anybody done that? Just me? Really? What, is that a fun ride? Seriously, it's painful, right? It's painful. Well, what does the seat represent in our business? Who's on the seat? Yeah, I would tell you, most people think that the owner's on the seat. Here's what I would tell you. It's not the owner, it's the two guys right here. It's the team. The team is on the seat. This is where your team sits. So these are your people programs. So this is all about your culture, your hiring processes, your compensation program, your reward systems, your incentive programs, those kinds of things. Whatever, so that the seat is positioned in a way so that people can put maximum power to the pedal of your bike. Does that make sense? Can you see a business there? Is that crazy? I promise you, here's what happened, right? As soon as I went through that with everybody, everybody said, oh, I know how a bike works. And they came up after the meeting, all of my employees, they came up and they said, hey Rich, I know where our bike is broke. I know where we're stuck. I know what's missing. I know what's loose. They started talking about it like this bike. Here's the other thing that I realized in that moment. Most people, when they think about the business, they put together this org structure that starts what at the top? Who's at the top? The owner, right? The owner's at the top. Who's at the bottom? Who's at the bottom? Everybody doing the work, right? They feel like they're at the bottom. They feel like they're less important. When I started talking to them, where were they on this bike? They were riding it, and they were many of them were pretty important on the back wheel. So they were no less important a component of the bike than the salespeople, right? Where in most organizations, the salespeople, they have big expense accounts, they fly all over the place, they spend money, and going to taking people lunch, while the people that are working are on the job, out there in the dust and dirt and going home sweaty and tired every day. And they're feeling like it, right? In this case, they all felt like they were an equal part of the bike. And so they all kind of jumped on board. Does that make sense? Can you see that? And it was all by just trying to reframe their mind on how the bike worked. And it's a powerful visual, right? Most people, here's the reality. Many of you in this room that have had businesses for a long time, you know how a business works. Most other people have no clue. And they have not only no clue, but they have no interest. They don't care. Until all of a sudden there's something that matters to them. Or there's something that they can connect to. Right? So that's why this bike has been pretty powerful for that. And I've had hundreds of business owners using it, and it makes sense, and everybody kind of gets it. Now, I told you, I'm looking at the clock, I got 20 minutes left. I told you I'd tell you the 3 areas that I think we have opportunities where we miss it most often, but I think there are ones that you could grab right away. And let me start here. Let me start by saying, it's all about steering your business. Steering your business. I said it was about strong leadership and a compelling vision. Let me just talk about the vision for a second, because I think sometimes we undermine ourselves in that regard. The way I think about a vision, I think about 3 parts to a vision. One is telling your story as a business owner of what you did in the beginning. Everybody wants to know your backstory. You may not think it's all that special, but I can tell you this. Every time I've gone to a business owner and I said, tell me why you're in this business, once I start digging and once I start getting underneath that, they tell me this really rich, powerful story of why they're in that business. And guess what? Then I say, have you ever told that to anybody? And what's the answer I typically get? No. Do you think people want to know your story? Were you interested in my dad's story? Do you think my dad's story matters to me? It's why I get up every day. People will get on your team if you tell your story. But you got to be bold about it. And every one of you has one. Nobody's sitting here saying, I don't have a, yeah, but Rich, I don't have a story. That's not true. We all have a story. It's why you're in this room. You got to tell it. You got to package it. And people have to hear it because you started your business for a reason. One, you got to do that. Second, you have to tell with clarity what you want this business of yours to look like in 5 years or 10 years in the future. Right? People want to know that they're on a team that's going somewhere. If I'm going nowhere, I have no interest in just coming in and working. And look, in today's market, I can get a job anywhere. Anybody, and we have more openings for jobs than we have people available to fill them in today's market here in Texas. You got to tell people where we're going. They want to be a part of something that's going somewhere. Without it, you're just asking them, you're just making a deal based on wages and you're going to lose every time. You got to get them to be passionate about where you want to go with your business. Right? I heard a little bit about your story. Right? I know what you're going to do. I know what, I've heard a couple of you guys tell me, it's got to be, tell me where, here's why I'm doing this, here's where we're going. Here's the third piece of this. You got to find, Roy mentioned it today, you've got to find a compelling cause that you can support with your business. Find a compelling cause and be real proud of it, be real public with it, and just say, guys, we're, based on what we do with our business, we're supporting this. Your employees will love it, and your customers will they choose to work with people who have a purpose that's greater than just you getting your second house, or you buying the new boat, or you going on vacation, right? If it's just about you and enhancing your life, people aren't gonna, they don't want to do that. But if you're doing something that matters, it makes a huge difference. I can tell you story after story after story about when we do that, everybody in the business gets on board, they get fired up, and things change in the business because they want to see that happen. So 3 things. Tell your story, paint the clear vision, it's got to be compelling. If it's a lame vision, I could care less whether I help you get there. And you got to have a purpose, right? Does that make sense? 3 things on that one. Take some time to do that. That's my first thought for you. Here's a second thought that I have for you. The second place where I think we have a lot of opportunity is on the frame. Most people, how many of you used to work in a corporate job before you had your own business? Okay, a few people have done that, right? We're all there. We've all worked for a bigger company, and we typically see structure as being bureaucratic, right? But I will tell you this, people in business, anybody who's working for someone likes to know how they fit in. Not only do they like to know, they need to know. So they need to see an org chart. But here's what I would tell you. Don't do your org chart like everybody does. I'd tell you a couple quick things. Do your org chart by function. Do your org chart 3 years in the future. In other words, not the org chart that you have today. Build that org chart as if you're, look forward 3 years and build the org chart and that you think you're going to need in 3 years. And then identify in sequence the jobs you're going to fill over the next 3 years. I had an architect do this, had been in business for 30 years. He had 35 people on his team. Everybody was kind of, you know, they'd just been going through the motions. Everything was fine. We did this org chart. He put this org chart on a piece of paper. He's an architect, right? So he did one about the size of that screen. And it had 60 boxes on it. 60 boxes. Half of them had no names. And then he said, guys, this is what I want the business to look like in 3 years. And then he gave it, here's a trick for you to do. This was magic, and it was crazy. He had a pen, he had a marker pen, and he said, hey, at the end of the meeting, I want you to take this pen and I want you to put your name in the box that you want to see yourself in 3 years. And everybody went up to the thing and put themselves in a box higher than where they were. What did that do for him right then? People were fired up. They said, I see that that's where you're going. Now I know there's a spot for me, because in most small businesses, most people think, look, you're the owner. You're not going anywhere. There's no, what's my upward place? Well, it isn't unless you're going to grow and expand. But if you have a vision and you're going to do that, you can. And then they have the place we want to be. So they did that. They got motivated to do that. And guess what it did? Then when he had his performance review time every year, the next cycle, what did he do? He basically said, hey, you put your name on this box. Let me tell you what you got to do to get there. The conversation was already made. Right? He had this, so it got into this development thing. It was powerful. Right? And if you do that one simple thing, just give somebody a picture of what the organization looks like in a structure 3 years in the future. And then let them participate and say, I want to see myself here, then help them. Then you can just coach them along on how to get there. Or you can say with honesty, look, you got to change some things if you want to get there the way you're behaving right now. I wouldn't put you in that role. But here's what you got to do. Does that make sense? Is that helpful? Right? I won't even get into the point about having job descriptions and all that other stuff or accountability systems, but I can tell you this. Most business owners, the way they deal with accountability is this. You see something you don't like, what do? You get flippin' mad, right? You freak out. Some of you probably maybe use some 4-letter words here and there, right? Not sure, maybe 2 of you. Not many, but you get mad. You don't because nobody knows what the standard is, and we don't hold them to a system. We don't have people do accountability every week. The accountability happens when they screw up, and I can promise you, if all people do is hear when they screw up, they'll go look for someplace else to work where they can have a little bit more positive reinforcement, and that comes from having accountability systems. People like accountability. They like to know how they're going to get scored. Everybody likes to be scored. Promise. So just figure that out in your business. Okay, there's number 2. Here's number 3. Let me give you a quick one. I got a few minutes left. The third one is the positioning of the seat. Right? I'm not going to talk. We've got other people here that are in the conference that are going to talk about the front wheel of your business or the back wheel of your business. And there's tons to know in there. And there's tons of ways to be able, and this, you can go deep and this is pretty rich. But in this case, the positioning of the seat, 2 critical things I would tell you. There are several adjustments on the seats, but 2 things I would tell you. Don't get lax in your hiring practice because we have a tough market. This is the time when you need to get more, it's got to be more difficult to get into your business than ever before. When people find it's difficult to get in, they'll stay longer. It's been proven time and time again. You make it easy to come in. In other words, I come in for one interview and you give me the job. I know it's easy to get in. Guess what? It's easy to leave. Make it hard. Make it hard to get in. Make them go through some wickets. Involve your team in the hiring process. If you think as a business owner you're the smartest person and you can determine everybody that's great to hire, I'm just going to give you a clue. You can't. You don't. You suck at it. Right? I can go back in the past and I can see everybody you've hired and I can tell you suck at it. Get people involved in that process. The other thing I do is I'd say have some reward systems that matter to them. I want to give you a quick example of something that I did, and it was one that, and I'm not suggesting you do this, but this was probably the biggest game changer of things I did when I had the 200 plus people in the manufacturing business. I could tell that they didn't get, we did profit sharing, yeah, that's a cool thing and it's powerful. But I could tell they just weren't energized by things. So what I did one time is I said, all right, look, we have 5 things that we're measuring. The 5 things we were measuring was attendance. These are simple things, right? This isn't complicated. Attendance, safety, productivity, quality, and does the customer like our product, right? So think about that. That pretty covers it. And we set targets on each 5. I brought everybody together one time and I said, look, here's the deal. We set these 5 targets and we set where we want to be here by the end of the year. Here's the deal I'm going to make with you. The first month we hit all 5 of these, I'm going to put all of your names into a hat, and one of you is going to get my car. And at the time, I was driving a fairly new Jeep Grand Cherokee, and these are factory workers. And I said, I'll put all your names in the hat, we'll draw out a winner, and somebody in here will get my vehicle. I'll sign the title over to you, and you can have it. Immediately, hands shot up. Does it have four-wheel drive? Does it have air conditioning? Right? Is it AM, FM stereo? Does it have a cassette player? Right? It was like they wanted to know everything about it. And I said, look, it's a nice car, you can see it. After the meeting, everybody went outside. I mean, everybody's on my car like this. They're kicking the tires, they're looking at it. Every time I came back to the factory for the next 4 months, every time I come in, they'd say, hey, how's my car? How are you doing with my car? Are you taking good care of it? And I'd say, yeah, but I'm still driving it. 4 months later, we hit all 5 targets. We rented out the Surf Ballroom, the last place that Buddy Holly played before his plane went down. We rented out the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa. We invited everybody and their family to come in. We had dinner, we had a big party, and we had put a stage up, and I had everybody's name in a big thing that tumbled. I stopped at the bank on the way there. I picked up several $100s worth of cash, because I figured I might need it to get out of this mess I was in. And so anyway, we pulled out 20 names out of the hat. So 20 people were finalists. They came up on stage. I offered them $200 to drop out of the deal right there. 2 people took it. So I had to whip out some money to the 2 people that took it. The others, we ended up drawing down. We ended up, a 28-year-old veteran in our business was the name we pulled that got my car. I had my car on the showroom floor, all polished, waxed up, ready to go. We signed over the paperwork right there. He got in the car. Everybody watched him. He drove out of the building in the boss's car. And then I got back up on stage and I said this. I got a ride home with my wife tonight and she's not very happy with me. Right? This isn't going to be a fun ride home. But here's what I now know. You can do anything you put your mind to. And my expectation is we're going to hit every goal that we set from now on. And guess what? We did. Because their big so what was they got to screw the boss. Right? I could have done that in a lot of different ways, but it was something in there where they all rallied around and they all rallied together and said, come on guys, somebody, let's get his car. Right? Now I'm not suggesting you give away your car, although if you've got a nice truck, maybe you could do that. I mean, I don't know, there's a possibility. But I'm telling you, if you find a reward system, something that matters to them, they'll do anything for you. And it'll drive your business without you having to do it. Right? Does that make sense? So spend some time thinking, be creative. That's the beauty we have as small business owners. We're not tied to this stuff that big corporations are tied to. We can be flexible, we can do clever things. Use your creativity on how you inspire your team to take some risks and do some work. Does that help? Now look, I don't have time to go through all this, so what I did is I put on your table, I put some cards. And what I did is I created a self-assessment tool. So I've got a self-assessment tool where it has questions about every component of the bike. If you want me to send that tool to you, all you have to do, I'm pretty low-tech. Put your name and email address on the back of it, and I'll send it directly to you. So if you do that, fill that out and leave it with me here. I'm not going to spam you. I'm not going to bug you. I want you to be able to look at your entire business and ask the question, where do I need to focus my efforts? Does that make sense? So if you're interested in doing it, if there's not one with you, there's some on the other chairs that we can get into. There's some pens at the back. Let me just close with this one last thought. I'll close with one last thought. You know, we've talked a lot about this bike as being a metaphor for business, and here's what I know you'll never look at a bike the same way again. I promise you. You'll see a bike, you're going to think about this. I'm going to hope that you never look at your business the same way again either. But I want to share one other thought. This bike has significance for me in another way. As a young kid, I loved all kinds of sports. Cycling was one of my favorites, but my true passion as a kid was running. As a teenager, my goal in life was always to qualify for and run the Boston Marathon. That was my big dream as a kid. I wanted to run the Boston Marathon. I tried several times, but each time I failed. Until one time I finally found some guy that had been there, they'd done it. I trained with him, and all I wanted was somebody who could help get me across the finish line in under 3 hours and 10 minutes. And in 1991, when I ran the Boston Marathon, I can still remember as I was coming to the finish line, looking around, wishing and hoping that my dad would have been there to see me finish. But he wasn't there. It wasn't that he didn't want to be there. He couldn't. He was stuck trying to make the business work, and there was no way he could get away. He would have done anything to be there to support me. But the truth is, my dad, while running was my biggest thing in my life, my dad never saw me run. He never saw me race. And that's not what a business is supposed to do. A business is supposed to let you enjoy your life, not be your life. And I can tell you this, if my dad were here with me today, I know what he would want for you. He would want your kids to have happy memories of you. He would want your spouse to live out the dream that you had when you got married. He would want your team to be fully engaged in your business in a way that made your life easy. And he would most of all want you to enjoy being a business owner. That's why I'm committed to help as many business owners as I can failure-proof their business by finding a way to engage the team in a real meaningful way. And I hope today's helped a little bit. I know we've taken up the full time, but thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time. If I can answer any questions, I'll be outside. I know we got to clear the room, but thank you for the opportunity to be here.